Somebody call John Coffey because these men are tired, boss. These men are tired. That is what I hear on Statica. I'm just going to say it. The lyrics make it obvious. The music or the mixing of the sounds of it all, I don't even know. I just hear the equivalent of throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks, throwing paint at a canvas and not caring a whole lot about what sticks. Like that. This is what I hear. However, maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the point. Now, I did mention that they have gone independent, and I am sure that part of that has to do with being exhausted by the music industry. Let's not be dumb about that. There is a reasonable assumption to be made, knowing their history, knowing how they openly feel about their complicated relationship with the industry. It's a reasonable expectation, a reasonable assumption to make that this was born of that, right? Of just being tired. And that might be why the whole thing sounds like they're tired. So with this knowledge in mind, I did wonder if this was the intended essence of Statica as a whole. Is Avenged Sevenfold now saying this almost verbatim and showing this with the music? I mean, if you ask me, I think there is a strong possibility when you pay close attention. But let's get into what the internet says. The biggest complaint that I've seen so far is this doesn't sound like Avenged Sevenfold. And they're not wrong. A lot of fans are struggling with the heavy auto-tune effects on the vocals or whatever effect is on there. Electronic, synth-heavy production, that's new. That's going to take getting used to. Less emphasis on Sinister Gates' guitar work. That's a bummer, in my opinion. Some strange song structures that are just not really traditional hooks. Takes a minute to digest. And a common criticism is that the experimentation sort of feels like it's replacing songwriting rather than enhancing it. And some reviewers have argued that the EP has ideas, but lacks memorable moments. There are definitely people calling it their worst material, with some fans saying they expected a prank or a joke somewhere in here because the sound was that unexpected. Now, defenders, let's go to the other side here. Defenders of Statica are saying you're missing the point. And this is kind of what I was getting at to begin with. The positive reaction is basically, did everybody forget this is Avenged Sevenfold? This is kind of what they do. They have switched it up for a decade now or so. Fans defending it do point out that the band has been a bit restless. That's kind of, at this point, what they are becoming known for. City of Evil abandoned those metalcore roots. Let's be clear about that. I would agree with that. The self-titled album experimented a little more with some genres. The stage went a little more progressive. Life is But a Dream. That went even further. So the argument that Statica is the next logical step, that's kind of what they're saying. They're a band refusing to become a nostalgia act. That is what defenders of this piece of work are suggesting. Some fans who initially hated it have also, I've caught on to this, have said that repeated listens changed their opinion because they started hearing the underlying Avenged Sevenfold fingerprints beneath the electronic production. And you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to be willing to give it more than the one listen I gave it. I don't know, but that was, it just seems like half the fans are loving it because they think this is what Avenged does. And the other half are like, it's a no for them. Of course, there is also the middle crowd. And I might fall more into the middle crowd here. I mean, there is a middle crowd saying that the whole thing just needs time. So let's revisit what I asked to begin with. Is genuine artistry about protecting a brand, or is it about chasing an idea? They are faced with that right now. Avenged Sevenfold is faced with this right now. To analyze and answer those questions, I think you first have to acknowledge a few things. There is an obvious tension between artist and audience. Once an artist becomes successful, they are no longer creating in a vacuum. They have a recognizable identity. They have fan expectations, and they have a history that is now attached to their name. Branding. It is all presented in a branded form. And fans often say they want authenticity, but sometimes that's actually just code for consistency. They're not quite using the right word there. And I would be willing to argue that. Yeah. As a fan myself, I will say consistency is probably the better word to use when we're talking about situations like this. So another question becomes, is an artist being authentic when they give fans what they expect, or when they follow their own curiosity, even if fans reject it? Now, my take is authenticity can look like both. Because how are you going to ignore everybody that came in the beginning for a whole new thing moving forward? I would have a hard time with that as a person. I think it's impossible to know what's true without being in the mind of the artist, but I do think that there is some nuance here. It can look like both. You can be authentic when you're giving fans what they expect, and also follow your own curiosity as an artist along the way. What I think is the more important question is, at what point does honoring your legacy become preserving a version of yourself that no longer exists? To me, that really ain't honorable at all. Like, you need room for everything. You need the roots and you need your evolution.